Hello, this is Ross Bliley from the podcast Pigskin Tales. This podcast is sponsored by Sterling Soap Company. With products sold throughout 41 locations around the globe, Sterling Soap Company has a unique assortment of products to choose from for your loved one for the holidays. Handmade artisan soaps created by Roderick and Amanda Lovin since 2012, these products are affordable and provide great value. Act now and save on your shipping costs. If you purchase $75 or more, your shipping cost is free in the United States. Shop now online at sterlingsoap.com.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Darren Hayes, host of the Pigskin Dispatch and Jersey Dispatch podcast. I hope you've enjoyed another great episode here on Sports History Network. Now, speaking of sports history, this episode was brought to you by Firefly Books, and they have two great ones for you this summer. For basketball fans, they have the NBA 75, The Definitive History by author Dave Zarum, who's appeared on our Jersey Dispatch podcast recently. He tells about the experience, the thrilling journey of the NBA, from its humble beginnings to its modern glory. Uncover the untold stories of triumph, controversy, and the greatest stars of the game. This isn't just a book. It's courtside seats to over 75 years of NBA history. And for the golf enthusiasts, swing into The Golf Round I'll Never Forget by Matt Adams. Relive 50 of golf's most memorable moments through the eyes of the legends themselves. From Garcia's triumph at the 2017 Masters to Nicklaus' miraculous 1986 comeback, it's the closest you'll get to walking the fairways with golf's greatest. Get your summer read on. Grab a copy of NBA 75 or The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, available online or at your favorite bookstore.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, weightlifting fans and sports fans. Welcome to another edition of No Nonsense, Old School Weightlifting History. And you can also find this on Yesterday Sports. And I'm joined once again today by my son, Everett.
This time physically.
This time he's here in person. So we wanted to start today's show with a little show and tell.
Yeah, because you mentioned in the last episode that we had some things to show.
We were talking about some of the
equipment,
weightlifting gear that was used years ago, back in the 80s. We were talking about weightlifting shoes, and this is one of the shoes I was talking about. This shoe I ordered in the mail in 1982. You could see by the style of them that these are not something that anyone's wearing today.
Yeah, they're not making anything like that now.
Or these, I think the name of the company was Red Wing, and they were in Minnesota. And you sent in a tracing of your foot, and they made this custom shoe for you.
Now, did you pick the colors as well? You got
I believe they only had one color.
Okay.
I believe this was the only color they had.
And these are really sharp, though. Like I said, nothing like this is being made now. And you trained in these for
quite a few
many years, so you can, just from that, I mean, it's obvious there's a lot of wear on these, but from how hard these were trained in and for how many years I think it really speaks to the build quality of these. Being fully leather construction, every part of this is hard leather. And yeah, I mean, I love the heel. I love this kind of separated heel. I can't fit in them, but I can tell how stable these are.
Yeah,
they certainly served you well.
Solid shoe. Very solid shoe.
Yeah, so it's like we were talking about the last time. I think in a lot of ways it's good that now there's a lot more availability of shoes.
Yep.
But we have lost something, and you can't get anything really special and custom like that.
That's right.
And I do envy that a little bit, because I can tell those were a fantastic show.
They sure were. They held up well. And here is another item.
Yeah, we mentioned this last time.
We mentioned this. This is a Bulgarian-style belt.
And again, fantastic.
Can't really get a good
build quality and fantastic leather. Because you use this as well.
I used that until it didn't fit me anymore.
Yeah,
and passed
now
it on
I've
to
been
you.
training in it, so I'll kind of try to demonstrate how this fits on.
Yeah.
For the video. So you can't really tell that there's anything special about it initially, other than that, it's a very old school leather belt, great build quality. It's held up extremely well. But what's special about it, as we mentioned, is the way that the metal part of the buckle fits on. You'll see if I put this on, it's actually, you can see this metal part of the buckle is slightly off to the side, which, as we mentioned before, the idea of that is in your clean, as you're pulling the barbell past your midsection here, there's no chance of hitting that as you're trying to keep the bar very close to your body. So this is still an excellent belt to this day, and it's another thing that you really can't get anything like this anymore. And I'm very grateful to have it, because it's certainly a very good belt to train in. And I like it a lot for my clean and jerk training.
Yep, and that was also purchased through the mail. I don't remember exactly what year. I'd say mid-1980s. It was purchased from a magazine. Maybe IOL, International Olympic Lifting Magazine, had advertisements for it. So, back then, obviously, there was no internet. So we ordered a lot of things through the mail. Here's some of the old singlets we were talking about. You could show that one, right?
Yeah, and these are both Adidas, right? But two different kinds.
Well, same kind, just different color.
Right.
Different
so
size.
You can see what we were talking about. These were really, actually, pretty slim. They showed a lot of the upper body.
It's got the 3 stripes.
And completely exposed the leg, quite similar to like a leotard, really.
It's got the Adidas insignia there, and USA weightlifting patch.
That's a bit of history
that
here.
I had that sewn on. That was also passed on to you.
Yeah.
When you first started lifting.
And then you can even see in here, I believe.
The tag.
Yeah, this will tell you the age on these. It actually says on there. I don't know if this will be visible, but it says on that tag, made in West Germany.
West Germany.
That will tell you the history of it, how old they are. And it also says in German, Die Marke mit dem 3 Streifen, which is the brand with the 3 stripes.
They were pretty expensive back then. And then once I outgrew that one, then I had to get another one. And this one is pretty stretched out.
Yeah, but this one I really like with the red and the blue. It's tangled up here. There you go.
And it's pretty stretched out.
And if you've watched any weightlifting competitions from the 80s, you've probably seen multiple elite level lifters wearing this exact singlet.
Yep. It's red, and on the back it's blue.
Yeah, it's really sharp.
And that is, well, just give you a better idea.
Yeah,
I have an old picture here where I'm actually wearing that singlet we showed. And that gives you a better idea. And there's the shoes too.
Yeah.
The shoes and the singlet. Unfortunately, I don't think I had the Bulgarian belt yet at that point.
No belt.
And this photo was taken by Bruce Clemens. And if you ever want to see some of Bruce's photos, he has them on a website called Flickr. Flickr is the name of the website. And you just type in, or you could just put on the Google, type in his name, Bruce Clemens Photography.
Yeah.
And you'll see his old photos and new photos.
Yeah, and that's an interesting topic to talk about because Bruce Clemens is kind of a legend in the sport in terms of the photography, and he's still photographing the sport today.
That's right.
And it's an interesting topic because you had the privilege of actually personally knowing Bruce.
Well, Bruce was training. Well, here's another piece of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Bruce at that time was training at the Belleville Barbell Club in New Jersey. And that's where I started going when I first started lifting. And Bruce was still competing at that time. I started Olympic weightlifting in 1981, and Bruce was still competing at that time. And move on to other topics. We could talk about how the Soviet bloc countries for many years dominated weightlifting. Basically from the early 1960s until the early 1990s. I think 1991, the day after Christmas, is when the Soviet Union was no more. So basically for 30 years, the Soviet bloc countries dominated the sport of weightlifting. Russia, Bulgaria, Poland, East Germany, Hungary, Cuba, and China with the lighter weight classes mostly. Mm. And up until around 1964, the U.S. had a very good weightlifting team. Pretty much all through the 1940s and 1950s, America was dominating weightlifting. But then I guess it was, the 1960s, bodybuilding became more popular in America. Powerlifting became more popular. And weightlifting started to become less popular. And these Soviet bloc countries basically dominated for 30 years until the Soviet Union fell. And then, Everett, you know more about the current situation of which countries.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, a lot of why these countries are so dominant in the Soviet-controlled countries was due to the communist background in those countries. And so in that system, it was all basically state-funded sports systems.
Yep.
So, of course, not just in weightlifting, but in many sports, these countries where the Soviet Union in particular was extremely dominant.
And
because
schools
they had
even,
exceptional,
sports schools.
Yeah, they had exceptional funding for sports and, yes, like you mentioned, schools and systems to seek out people and at these sports schools determine who had the qualities to be good at which sports. And so they had the systems and the funding to create exceptional teams of athletes.
Absolutely. I'm just making sure that we have everything correct here.
Yep, everything looks good.
And so which countries today?
Right. That being said, that things have not changed tremendously because of that. You mentioned China being very dominant in lighter weight classes. Well, now China is one of the most dominant countries in the sport, and it's not just the lighter weight classes anymore. Now for a few decades they've been extremely dominant. North Korea as well, very notable. They've sort of had ups and downs because they have been banned a few times as a country, but China has very consistently been extremely dominant in all the weight classes on the men's and women's side.
Right.
Russia is still very prominent not to the extent they were then in the Soviet Union, but Russia is certainly still extremely prominent. Many of the countries you mentioned are still, maybe not to that same extent of dominance, but they're still very prominent in the sport. So you still see Russia quite a bit. Right now, there's a bit of turmoil with that. They're not really allowed to compete representing Russia, but the Russian athletes are still competing, still doing very well. Bulgaria is still definitely prominent. They don't have the same extent of like the number of athletes they had back then that were very dominant, but they still occasionally turn out some extremely dominant weightlifters right now, most notable being Carlos Nassar, who at the moment with Lasha Telekadze from Georgia most likely being retired, Carlos Nassar right now is the most dominant man in the sport in terms of Sinclair ranking. Right. And he is from Bulgaria. So Poland, you mentioned, they're definitely still relevant. Poland, Germany. Of course, Germany is no longer separated into East and West Germany. Certainly you still see lots of German athletes, but not to that extent of dominance. Right. They do quite well in the European Championships, but they're certainly not on that same world level. But you do still see a lot of these same countries being very prominent. You have Romania as well, was and still is very prominent.
But now it's just more spread out, right?
Yeah.
Since there's no more Soviet Union. All these
yes, because a lot of these countries fell under that. Yeah. Like, for instance, Ukraine, Belarus, countries of that nature, Georgia as well. Yeah. A lot of these countries and these famous athletes were from these smaller countries, but were representing the Soviet Union. And you still see all of those countries being very prominent today in weightlifting.
That's right. And for a while, Australia, right?
Yeah.
In the early 90s, the mid 90s, a lot of guys from Bulgaria went to Australia. Stefan Botev went to Australia. And
so they moved there after the fall of the Soviet Union.
That's right.
And we believe that's because, from what we've seen, there's lots of international competitions at that time took place in Australia.
Right.
So we expect probably a lot of these lifters had met some people and knew some people in Australia.
Right.
From being there at these competitions. So after that fall of the Soviet Union, a lot of them had connections to move to Australia.
Right.
Interestingly.
So we talked a little bit about how 2 of the Olympics were ruined because of politics. 1980 Olympics, which were in Moscow, was boycotted by the U.S. because of Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. Jimmy Carter was the president at that time, the U.S. president. And so you could imagine all these, not just weightlifting, but all of these athletes that spent half their lives trying to make the Olympics and finally make it, and then they're told you can't go.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, the 1984 Olympics, which were in Los Angeles, the Soviet Union boycotted. So 2 Olympics completely ruined. So a lot of athletes never got a chance to win a medal that they otherwise would have won if not for these boycotts.
Maybe most notably being Anatoly Pisarenko.
Anatoly Pisarenko, super heavyweight for Soviet Union. definitely would have won a gold medal.
And he was very outspoken about that.
Yes, he
and
was.
Really, I mean, all politics aside, he makes some excellent points with what he talked about. Because all politics aside, really, what happened with both of those boycotts was very unfair to all of the Olympic athletes.
Extremely unfair.
That were ready to go.
Extremely unfair. And really, a lot of them really never got over it.
Yeah, yeah.
People don't understand the years and years of dedicated training and all the sacrifices you have to make in your life, and then you're told, sorry, you're not going.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's for an Olympic quad, it's 4 years of sacrificing everything in your life to dedicating to training.
Yep. Then, of course, there was 3 other Olympics that didn't take place at all. 1916, due to World War I, there was no Olympics. And 1940 and 1944, no Olympics due to World War II. So people like Jesse Owens, for instance, won a gold medal at the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, and maybe he would have continued on and won another gold medal in 1940. But so I mean, that's two Olympics. So we're talking about a span of 12 years. Anyone that competed in the 1936 Olympics, the next Olympics was 1948.
Right.
So,
most likely retired by that time.
Anyone that competed at the Olympics in 1936, they weren't, very few, I'm sure, made it to the 1948 Olympics.
Very unfortunate very different circumstance, of course, from the 2 boycotts. At least in that circumstance, I imagine there was a understanding among all the athletes that they expected that Olympics wasn't going to go ahead.
Right. At least that was a little more obvious.
Yeah.
Once the war started, it was pretty obvious that there wasn't going to be an Olympics. We could talk about some other topics. We were talking about before during my time, when I first started watching weightlifting before I even started competing. My first experience of actually watching weightlifting on television was in the early 1970s, probably around 1971. Wide World of Sports, which was on ABC, Channel 7. And they would show weightlifting on Wide World of Sports. And they would show weightlifting probably a little more than they do today in the Olympics. They would probably show more weightlifting in the Olympics at that time.
Definitely. They don't show very much today at all.
No. But other than...
on television, at least.
Yeah. Other than Wide World of Sports and the Olympics, really, we didn't have YouTube, of course, at that time, so there was no way that you could watch unless you actually went to a competition.
Mm-hmm.
There really wasn't. We got most of our news from the magazines, the weightlifting magazines. We had Strength and Health. We had World Weightlifting Magazine, International Olympic Lifting Magazine, Iron Man, and other than the magazines, we had Dennis Reno's newsletter. So that was our main source of getting information. Someone might break a world record, and you probably didn't know about it until 2 or 3 weeks later when you read about it in the magazine.
Right.
But of course today, thankfully, we have a lot more coverage. We have YouTube.
Yeah.
And you could show your shirt there.
Yeah, in fact, the shirt that I have of Weightlifting House, that is perhaps the most prominent source of weightlifting coverage right now, and weightlifting information about the competitions, both through their videos on YouTube and also online on their website. They have a lot of news articles about everything that's going on currently. So definitely it's a lot more available now.
Yeah.
To see coverage of everything. Weightlifting House, they commentate at many of these international competitions now.
Right.
So you get very good coverage from them there. They're putting up lots of videos of training hall footage.
Right.
They're there at these competitions recording the training hall and uploading sessions of the competitions themselves. So it's definitely very available now to actually get to see coverage of all these things. Similar to back then, you had to know where to look for it.
Right.
You still have to know where to go for it, but that coverage is very available. The only thing I think is missing compared to back then was, like you mentioned, there was some coverage on television.
Right.
And I think that's very interesting watching things like that. It's that was, even though it was limited coverage from what I've seen, it was very good coverage.
It was very good coverage, yes.
Yeah, and the thing that I find interesting with that compared to today is, even though the coverage was more limited,
right,
I think there was more exposure to people that weren't familiar with weightlifting already. Right. Now there's great coverage, lots of availability of the coverage, but you're not going to be exposed to that unless you're already in the scene and you're looking for those things. And I think that's the one thing that's missing now. Like when you had Wide World of Sports getting this coverage, that gave exposure of the sport to people who didn't already know about it.
Right.
And I think that's a very interesting difference.
Yeah.
Although the popularity of weightlifting is much higher than back then, certainly. I think more people are aware of it. But I think it would be very good if there was still something like that for people to be exposed to it more frequently.
Yeah, especially with you have a million different channels now. You would think in the early 80s, ESPN became a popular sports channel, but I don't really remember them showing. I think maybe once in a blue moon they'd show some weightlifting, but they weren't really showing a lot of it on ESPN.
Yeah.
And you would think with all the channels we have today on television that somebody would.
I think it would be especially good now. This actually ties back to when we were talking about countries and the different time periods in which countries were dominant. I did fail to mention that right now the U.S. is doing better in the sport than they have since, like you mentioned, back in the 50s and early 60s, where the U.S. was quite dominant in the sport. Right now, the U.S. is doing better in weightlifting than they have since that time.
That's true.
We're certainly not a dominant country by any means, but we have some very notable athletes, particularly in the men's lightweight class. We have Hampton Morris, who actually holds the clean and jerk world record in that weight class, and he's exceptional. He won a bronze medal at the Paris Olympics, and that was the first Olympic medal won by a male weightlifter in a long time.
Well, 1976, Lee James won a silver medal in the 90 kilo class. 1984, although it wasn't, quite the same competition that Lee James had to go against, because 1984 was boycotted by the Soviets, but we did have two medalists, Silver medal went to Mario Martinez in the super heavyweight division. And Guy Carlton, I believe, got a bronze medal in the 110 kilo class.
Mm-hmm.
But the world record that you're talking about,
Yeah.
I believe the last world record prior to Hampton Morris, is that his name? The last world record, I believe, was by Bob Bednarski, if I'm correct about that. And that was like 1969.
Yeah,
so
a long drought
we
of
are
U.S.
talking
medals in weightlifting.
a really long drought.
Yeah,
and then some of the women, right?
Yeah. Now the U.S. women have been doing pretty well for a bit longer. Women's weightlifting, of course, being a lot newer.
Right.
So I think we had a little bit more of a chance to do well in that as it was less established. But they're only getting better and better. They were winning some medals, but most notably in this Paris Olympics was Olivia Reeves winning a gold medal in her weight class.
Right. And what weight class was she in?
I believe that was, may be mistaken here, but I believe that was the 76 kilo weight class. It was either 71 or 76. I have a hard time remembering those classes, but she's exceptional. And she's only getting better and better, and that's a big deal to have an American gold medal in weightlifting. That's certainly the first time that's happened in a very long time.
That's right.
So, point being, with the U.S. doing better than they ever have, the popularity of the sport being higher than it's ever been, it would be fantastic if these things were seen a bit more.
Yeah.
And the performances of those two athletes in particular really deserve to be highlighted in the news more than they were.
Yeah, it's hard to understand, especially given the fact that it has been so many years since the U.S. has done anything in weightlifting. You would think it would get more publicity.
Yeah, and it's, like I said, within people that are already in the scene and knowing to look for these things, it is a really big deal.
Right.
People understand that's a big deal, but I think it deserves a little more general recognition.
It does.
Because we are doing better than we have in a long time.
Yeah.
And that's very impressive considering that all these other prominent countries we talked about are also only getting better. And we're starting to keep up.
Yeah.
In some classes.
Yep. So we can move on to some other topics. One thing that we did forget to talk about in the last episode, we were talking about how many things have changed. I always
in the competitions.
In the competitions themselves, I always took note of like the stage that the lifters lifted on, the background, like they would have even some of the ones that we watched some of the videos on YouTube from the 1990s. They would always make sure that they had a nice background on the stage, the decorations, and they would actually have plants and flowers on the stage, like in back of the lifting platform.
Right, on the back wall.
Right. Yeah. They would have plants, they would have flowers, and I think that's gone. I don't think they do that anymore.
Yeah, I think that must have stopped sometime in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Or so.
And I kind of liked that. I thought it was a nice background to have. And another thing that's changed, and during my time of competing in the 1980s, and I don't know when they started doing this, but there was never any thought of having music during a weightlifting competition. And I don't know when they started doing that, but I mean, they will turn it off, of course, once the once the lifter is ready to.
Once they step up to the platform.
Once the lifter steps up to the platform, they'll stop the music. But
yeah,
even just
there was
having
never any music at all.
I think it would be very distracting for myself. I mean, I competed after my Olympic weightlifting career. I didn't compete for a number of years, and then I started competing in powerlifting, and I couldn't believe that they would play this heavy metal music even while you're going up to do your lift, and they're playing heavy metal music.
I think that was particular to the division you were lifting in, but even so,
it could be.
Yeah, I think in like the USAPL, for example, I think it's quite similar to what we have now in weightlifting.
They play
where they'll
music,
play,
but they'll stop. Yeah. So.
But that was a big shock to you.
That was very disturbing, and I would tell them, please, I was polite about it, and they didn't give me a hard time. I would tell them, please, when I go up to do my lift, please turn the music off.
Yeah.
I'm trying to focus and concentrate. So that was bizarre to me, and I think it's bizarre to even be playing music at all, because this is a very mental preparation that goes into the focus that you have to have and concentration you have to have. To me, that would be very distracting.
Yeah, I imagine for these lifters that have come up in their career with it, I imagine, doesn't seem to bother them, of course. And as we mentioned, they do stop it for their lift naturally. But that is a big difference. I think it's quite recent that was introduced at all, because I don't remember that even in the 2010s.
Right.
So that must be quite a recent development.
Yeah.
Just within these past few Olympic cycles.
And getting back to the flowers and plants, they would even, when they give the lifters their medal, they would use in the big international competitions. Yeah. They would give the lifter a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah, along with
the medal.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
That's changed.
I don't recall seeing that recently. I mean, they did that for a long time.
They did it
but they do still usually give something.
Right.
And there's still, the thing that I like to see is, which they never stop doing, is there's always some kind of, the ceremony is centered around some traditions of the country it's being held in.
Right.
Which I think is nice to see.
Yeah.
It's good for a ceremony. But yeah, I think they do usually still receive something, but I don't recall in recent years ever seeing flowers being given.
Right. Oh, and the one thing you were talking about the other day when we were watching some old lifting videos on YouTube, now I lost my train of thought. The coverage, something to do with the coverage you had mentioned.
Not to do with the...
It was when they would, like Wide World of Sports.
Yeah.
Before they would get to the lifting,
yes.
They would give a history lesson.
On the city it was being held in.
The city and the country that it was being held in.
Yeah, that's definitely missing. I like to see that. I like to see something about the place. And there is a little bit of that in a different way. Like we mentioned, Weightlifting House being one of the outlets that has most of the coverage now.
Right.
You don't see this in the videos of the competitions really, but if you watch some of their videos prior to the competitions, there are some things sort of like this, because they'll sometimes do videos highlighting a certain athlete.
Right.
And usually you'll get to see some of the city that the competition's being held in through those videos, because they'll be walking around the place and they'll highlight some of the unique characteristics about the place.
Right.
But I really liked in those older coverages the depth they went into about it.
They would give you...
I like that. I like to have the background of the place that this competition is being held in. It gives you a bit of context, I think.
They give you a little history lesson, and the one announcer that was always really good on My World of Sports did weightlifting. Bob Beatty, his name was. He was really good. And then later they had Doug Cooney, we saw, right? Doug Cooney was a good announcer. And, okay, so moving on to some other topics. We don't have too much more left to talk about, but two topics that are kind of in the same subject is what the differences from the time when I was lifting, 1980s, and the time that Everett is lifting now. We've seen some changes in training methods, and we've seen some changes in technique. There have been some technique, I think mainly the technique difference that I see that really stands out is a lot of lifters are no longer using the split jerk.
Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but a lot more.
Well,
than in the 1980s, by far a lot more.
1980s, almost everyone split. Victor Sotz was one of the few guys that I think Zacharievich sometimes would do push jerk, push press. Victor Sotz.
Either push or power jerk.
Yeah.
We would call that. And that's a jerk where instead of going into the split position, it's using the same sort of start as the split jerk, but instead of using a split with the feet, spreading the feet to the side to jerk the weight overhead.
But now...
And then similarly the squat jerk, which
now
was very rare back then.
I don't recall seeing anyone doing that.
Yeah, I think at that time probably the only people doing it were the lighter, very lightweight class.
Very light, yeah.
From
like the flyweights.
Yeah, like China and perhaps a few from a few other Asian countries.
Right.
But mostly China, I think. And that is usually where you still see the squat jerk is in China. And again, still not nearly as common as the split jerk, but that's definitely something that's a lot newer. And that's like a power jerk, except descending into a even deeper squat position with the bar, which has extreme mobility demands, because that's similar to the bottom position of the snatch. Well, it's the same as the bottom position of the snatch, sitting in a deep squat with the barbell overhead. But the difference, of course, to that from the snatch is the grip is much closer. Yeah. And that's what gives the extreme mobility demand from it, is to be able to hold the bar with that close grip in a deep squat. It requires extreme mobility everywhere. And the big problem with it is it has extremely little room for error. And that's part of why it's not a common technique being used. And most coaches will tell you that it's not a good technique. I think most people agree that there are very few people that can make that work at all. And then there are even fewer people that will be more successful at that than a split jerk. Most people who use that technique, they had a very hard time learning the split jerk. Right. And they were able to do that, and they were doing well with it. And that's usually the cases that you see lifters using the squat jerk. But that's definitely quite a rare case, and it's not recommended to most people. And even the elite athletes who do use it, again, I think most coaches would agree. Yes, they are making that work for them. Yeah. But and it's not really they're an elite athlete and everything. But I think most coaches would agree that they would have been better off if they stayed the course and learned the split jerk more proficiently.
Yeah, I had a hard enough time with the overhead squat with a snatch grip. Yeah. I can't imagine doing an overhead squat with a clean grip. I can't even imagine. My shoulders would just snap.
Yeah. Yeah, it requires incredible mobility everywhere, both lower body and upper body. Yeah. Exceptional mobility, and there's just no room for error at all.
No, not at all.
And you'll see that part of the argument that it's not the best technique to use is even these elite athletes that are doing well with these jerk techniques, usually they have higher miss rates than their competitors that are using split jerks.
That's true. Yep. Yeah.
Famously from China, Tian Tao, who used squat. Well, he power jerked and then he squatted lower when he had to. Right. He was exceptional. He won medals all the time. Right. But sometimes he would win the competition going 2 for 6. Wow. And he was famous for his inconsistency in making lifts. Even though when he made them, they won the competitions. Right. He always gave people a heart attack because
he was going to bomb out.
He'd be famous for constantly missing his jerks.
So I guess our final topic, unless there's something else you want to add, the differences in training methods, training programs. During my time, I think training programs were probably a little more basic. Mm-hmm. When I started, I came, I was lifting weights when I was a teenager, and I would do clean and jerks in my basement, but I had no idea about technique. And the snatch, I had no idea how to do it. I never even attempted that. But my point was, so I came from lifting in my basement, and I was doing a lot of bodybuilding exercises and so on. And so when I started to actually do Olympic lifting, the people that were helping me, my coach and my teammates, stressed that you got to stop doing all those bodybuilding exercises because it's not really. It was okay to do some of it, but only as like an assistant. So it took me a little while to break out of that. So mainly they said, you got to focus on the lifts, the cleans. You could do cleans and jerks separately. Mm-hmm. If you want. If you wanted to, like my weak point was the jerk. So I had to do a lot of jerks from the rack, and cleans I was pretty good at. So you got to do cleans. You got to do split jerks from the rack. Clean and jerk, of course. You got to do snatches from the floor, snatches from the hang position, snatches from the blocks. And other than the lifts, basically it was pulls, clean pulls, snatch pulls, front squats, back squats. And anything beyond that was just, maybe if you wanted to do some assistance work, it was maybe, 2 or 3 sets and nothing extreme. And the idea was you do the lifts, you do pulls, you do squats. And that was basically it. It wasn't real complicated. You learned the technique and you worked hard. You trained. Usually you tried to train 4 times a week, 3 or 4 times a week. Mm-hmm. And that was basically it. But I think today training programs are a little more
I wouldn't
complex.
I wouldn't say they're drastically different.
Right.
I think that the differences are really just in the nuance.
Right.
And I think most of that is just changes in coaching knowledge. Just over the years, coaches have experimented a bit more. And there's just a small bit more nuance. I don't think there's a huge difference. The objective of the sport is to snatch and to clean and jerk. So there's absolutely no way around getting a lot of volume in at your snatch and your clean and jerk. And that's absolutely still the focus. I think the big difference from what you've described to me about the way you were coached and trained is just, and again, I think this is just where a lot of experimentation over time and coaching knowledge comes in. I think the big difference is just that there are more variations used of the lifts.
Right.
And what we mean by a variation is, you mentioned a hang snatch, for instance.
Yeah.
That's a variation of the snatch, or a block snatch. That's a variation of the snatch. I think now there's a few more variations that are sometimes used that weren't necessarily really used during your time. For instance, a very popular one is a no-foot snatch.
Yep.
Where you will not, like normal, you would shuffle your feet to the side in the snatch.
Right.
And this is focused on not moving the feet purposely. That's a good example of a variation that it seems like you never really encountered.
No, we were told not to do. We were, if you weren't shuffling your feet, you were told you know, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's still the belief today.
Yeah, but
the
weren't,
no-foot snatch is
a
that
variation. Wasn't part of our. That was not a variation. We were discouraged from doing anything like that. And muscle snatches.
Muscle snatch is another one.
That was unheard of.
But that's mostly, again, this is like kind of a nuanced thing, because a muscle snatch, that's something that might be used as a technique primer.
Right.
Something used during the warm-up.
Right.
Not to a very heavy weight, only up to the point where you can use good technique. And it's just to kind of prime your upper body to prepare you for the full snatch. I think where the nuance comes in with a few of these different variations that are used now is you can't just, same with the hang or block lift, you can't just use them for the sake of using them. You use those to target specific needs.
Right.
And the same with these other variations. So the no-foot snatch, for instance, you wouldn't recommend everybody to use that, and you certainly don't recommend everybody to use all of these variations. It's all targeted to a specific lifter's needs. So if you have somebody who one of their big problems in the snatch that is constantly coming up is they have a huge jump forward. When their feet leave the floor, they have a big jump forward or a big jump back in the snatch. That's the kind of person you would have them, not all of the time, but at one of their days of the week that they snatch, to do the no-foot snatch variation, because that will force them to fix their technique, and because they can't jump forward or backwards, it will expose what they're doing wrong that causes that jump forward.
Yeah.
And you'll easily miss at light weights because of that error, because you can no longer jump forward to compensate for that error. So it forces you to fix those things.
Right.
So I think that's the main difference now, is there's a little bit more acknowledgement toward individual lifters and specific mistakes and how to address those specific mistakes.
Right.
For an independent lifter. I think that's mainly the difference now in training. I don't think too much has really changed since then. Certainly still huge emphasis on squats as well. You cannot get away from that.
No.
That's an absolute pillar of weightlifting. You have to get a lot of volume in at both your front squat and your back squat.
Yeah, we would squat no less than 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
You had to squat usually 2 back squats and 1 front squat.
That's the same recommendation.
That was minimum. That was the minimum. You had to do at least 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe percentages are...
That's probably changed a little bit.
Different.
Yeah.
When I started lifting...
The structure of training.
Yes, in 1981. So a lot, most of the guys that I lifted with, most of the guys that were teaching me, these were guys that were older than me, guys that lifted, most of these guys started in like the mid 70s. So at that time, all the training information was basically the stuff that the Soviet Union was doing.
Right.
So for instance, with the squats, we were told, now we don't know if everything they told us was 100% accurate and true. But
I think another important point there is you didn't know everything
right.
that they had.
Yeah.
You know.
But we found out years later that their training methods weren't really that much different than what we were doing. But they just had more time to train, of course.
Yeah.
And we were told, one of the big things, talking about squats, we were told that the Soviets had a squatting program where you would take 85% of your best squat and do 5 sets of 5. 5 sets, 5 repetitions with 85% of your maximum squat.
Mm-hmm.
And when I sat down and figured out what my percentage was, so how the heck am I going to do that for 5 sets of 5? Are they kidding me? So the training was pretty tough. And then, of course, once we got to like the mid 80s, the Bulgarians were starting to take over. So, of course, everyone wanted to train like the Bulgarians, which was not even possible.
Yeah, you can't because you are not inside of the Bulgarian training system.
Right.
That's the thing that people need to understand about different methods of training is
right.
It's different training systems.
That's right.
And those training systems are completely built around that specific environment and situation. And that can't be done outside of that scenario.
That's right. And some people would say, well, I'm doing a variation of Bulgarian training. But there really is no variation. It's like you said, a system, and these guys are being paid. At that time, we still had the Soviet Union, the Soviet bloc, and these guys were getting paid to lift.
Yeah.
So they trained, 6 times a day, the Bulgarians? They had six separate training sessions a day.
Yeah, just absurd numbers of max outs. And going to maximum in both lifts and the front squat multiple times a day.
Yep. So, obviously, we couldn't do that. So, other than that, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think just it really goes to show how much the Soviets had figured out with training that really, with a few outliers like that Bulgarian system, most training methods and systems are in some way built upon the foundation of the training methods that the Soviets used.
Right.
Even still, it's all built upon that in some way.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And it's, at the end of the day, it's all periodization.
Yep.
Any differences are just slight changes in how you get to that peak.
Right.
But it's still all the same exercises, just slightly different applications of them.
Yep.
You might have some higher volume in the squats at the start of a training cycle now.
Yeah.
Than you used to. Just a few nuanced differences, really.
So when you get down to it, as much as things have changed, some things remain the same. You gotta do the lifts, you gotta do your squats, you gotta do your pulls, and
some things are just requirements. And
Yeah.
it's the same with technique. You know, we talk about how there's some slight nuance changes in technique, but really those are just nuances, because at the end of the day, technique, there are certain rules to technique.
Yeah.
There are certain fundamental principles of technique that no matter how your nuances to the technique manifest themselves, there are certain positions that we absolutely need to hit and certain principles that need to be obeyed for good technique.
You have to keep the bar close.
Yeah.
You got to brush the thighs. You got to get full extension. Elbows out. Don't use your arms. These are all basic principles.
Yeah, there are positions that you objectively need to hit. Your shoulders must be over the bar at the knee. You have to pass the knee.
Yep.
Without moving the bar out.
Banging. Yeah.
You know. So.
Okay.
Some things change a bit, but ultimately they stay the same because weightlifting is nothing new. Humans have lifted things for as long as there have been things to lift, and
that's right.
It's at the end of the day, it's a matter of physics. There is an objectively best way to lift something.
That's right.
And beyond that, it's just slight nuances in how we achieve that.
And like the old saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yes.
So, all right. I think we covered everything.
Yep. I think so.
We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and God bless.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
The Sports History Network, where legends live on and the past plays loud. Welcome to the place where history's proud, from gridiron glory to the hardwood stars, from the racetrack heat to Olympic bars. It's the voices, the stories, the moments you miss, told by fans and pros who live for this. Hook and Themic, the Sports History Network, where the past comes alive. Podcasts and blogs that keep the flame high, from Babe to Brady, Alley to the Dome. If it's history and sports, then this is the home. SportsHistoryNetwork.com, the headquarters of sports yesteryear.